Ancient builders achieved feats that defy modern logic without a single digital tool. This video will decode 20 ancient measurement systems that achieved impossible precision, transforming how you see the ingenuity of our ancestors. We will reveal the hidden knowledge in pyramids and temples, showing why these forgotten standards hold urgent lessons for our world today. How did a civilization align a city with the stars using only a knotted rope? What secret geometry allowed stones to fit together without a gap for centuries? By the end, you will see the past not as a primitive guess, but as a landscape of profound and precise science. What does it truly mean to measure our place in the universe? The shadow stretched long across the plain, a silent marker cast by a standing stone. For a Neolithic watcher, this was not just a line of darkness, it was a clock, a calendar, and a covenant with the heavens. The very first measurements humanity ever made were not born from commerce or construction, but from a profound need to understand our place within a vast and orderly cosmos. This was the foundational principle, the bedrock of all that followed, measurement as an act of cosmic harmony. Ancient cultures did not see a separation between the earth they walked on and the stars they navigated by. To measure a field, to lay the foundation of a temple, was to echo a divine pattern visible in the movement of the sun, the moon, and the planets. As historian of science Livio Catulo Stecchini observed, ancient metrology was a sacred science, a bridge between. This was not mere superstition, it was a sophisticated recognition of pattern. They observed that certain cycles, like the solar year, repeated with unwavering consistency. So they asked a revolutionary question: what if our human scale tools could reflect that celestial perfection? The answer created units of measure that were astonishingly interconnected. Take the renowned Egyptian royal cubit, a length of about 20.6 inches. Modern analysis reveals it was not an arbitrary king's forearm, but a precisely derived fraction of the Earth's polar circumference. Imagine dividing the distance around our planet at the poles by a specific, elegant number, and you arrive at this humble unit used to build pyramids. This relationship between the immense and the intimate is the key. The geometry of the human body, the span of a hand, the length of a stride, was carefully correlated with planetary motions and the dimensions of the Earth itself. The proof is etched in stone. The base perimeter of the Great Pyramid of Giza, measured in these sacred cubits, is a fraction that mirrors the Earth's polar radius scaled down. The builders were not just stacking blocks, they were creating a model of the Northern Hemisphere in miniature, a permanent testament written in limestone and geometry. So what does it mean that our ancestors saw measurement as a spiritual act? It means precision was not for its own sake, but for alignment. Every measured line in a temple, every plotted city street, was an intentional echo of a universal order they believed was divine. This cosmic connection was the silent blueprint, the shared language of proportion that laid the indispensable groundwork for every impossible feat of precision we are about to explore. That black granite rod in the architect's hand was more than a ruler, it was a key to the cosmos. The royal Egyptian cubit, measuring about 52.3 centimeters, was the absolute standard from which the Great Pyramid itself was born. But its true genius lies not in its length, but in its internal architecture. This unit was subdivided into 7 palms, and each palm into 4 digits, creating 28 digits in total. This number 28 is no accident. It mirrors the approximate number of days in a lunar cycle, directly embedding the rhythm of the moon into the very tool used to measure the Earth. This was measurement as poetry, a physical standard harmonizing celestial patterns with terrestrial construction. The proof of its staggering precision is locked in the stones. Archaeologist Flinders Petrie, after painstaking surveys of Giza, found that the variation in block lengths across the entire Great Pyramid complex was less than 0.05%. To visualize that, imagine cutting thousands of stones, each weighing multiple tons, with a consistency finer than the thickness of a modern coin. They achieved this not with a factory, but with master craftsmen using a system so robust it defied time. So how was this perfect standard maintained across generations? The leading theory points to a simple yet profound natural instrument, the pendulum. A pendulum of a specific length, perhaps 1 cubit, swings with a consistent period. By counting its swings against a known interval, like the passage of a star, any deviation in the pendulum's length, and thus the cubit standard, could be detected and corrected. Shadow lengths from obelisks or gnomons at the equinox could also provide a celestial check. This created a self-correcting system where the sky itself was the ultimate calibration tool. This divine precision was then encoded into sacred space. Look at the king's chamber inside the Great Pyramid. Its dimensions form a precise rectangle measuring 10 by 20 cubits. This 2-to-1 ratio is not arbitrary. It generates powerful acoustic resonance and embodies fundamental geometric principles. The chamber's volume, the height of its walls, even the placement of its sarcophagus, all resonate with mathematical constants like pi and the golden ratio when calculated in cubits. The room was not just a resting place, it was a tuned instrument, a physical equation built with a unit of measure that was itself a fragment of the Earth's dimensions. The reflective question then becomes almost haunting. Without a central ministry of weights and measures, without digital records, how did this knowledge persist so perfectly for centuries? The answer may lie in the system's sacred nature. The cubit was not merely a technical tool, it was a theological truth, guarded and transmitted by priestly architects for whom a deviation was not a manufacturing error, but a spiritual rupture. This reverence for cosmic order, etched into granite and sky, set a benchmark of precision that would echo through the ancient world and challenge our understanding of what an ancient civilization could truly achieve. A city rises from the river's silt, its streets laid out in a perfect grid under the relentless sun. In ancient Mesopotamia, the act of measurement was the very foundation of civilization itself, a tool not for cosmic poetry, but for practical creation. Here, the primary units were the ninden, a length of about 6 meters, and the larger gyar, which equaled 12 ninden. These were the building blocks of an empire, used to define everything from a farmer's field boundary to the monumental base of a ziggurat reaching for the gods. Their power, however, lay not in their size, but in the beautifully complex mathematical system that governed them, the Sexagesimal base 60 system. This is the same system that gives us 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour, a legacy of Mesopotamian thought embedded in our daily lives. As scholar Elena Robson explains, this base 60 system was chosen for its incredible divisibility. Unlike our base 10 system, 60 can be evenly divided by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, and 30. This made calculations for land division, wages, and construction fractions remarkably simple and precise for the scribes recording on clay tablets. This mathematical elegance was applied with stunning rigor. The layout of great cities like Uruk reveals a master plan built upon these units, with temple complexes and processional ways adhering to measured proportions that organized sacred and civic space into a coherent whole. But the system grew even more sophisticated with the concept of the ush. An ush was a unit that elegantly merged time and distance, representing the distance a person could walk in a double hour. This created a living, human-scaled link between the journey and the clock, essential for administering a vast kingdom. This fusion of time, space, and number reached its zenith in astronomy. Mesopotamian scholar priests, tracking the cycles of the moon and planets, used these same measures and their sexagesimal math to calculate the Saros cycle. This is a period of approximately 18 years and 11 days after which the Sun, Moon, and Earth return to nearly the same relative geometry, allowing for the prediction of eclipses. To achieve this, they didn't have telescopes. They had relentless observation and a measurement system capable of handling complex, recurring patterns. So we must ask, what does it mean that our minutes and hours are born from the same logic that measured a Sumerian field? It reveals a profound truth that the origins of abstract calculation itself are rooted in the most concrete needs to build, to trade, to govern, and to predict the patterns of the heavens. The Mesopotamians gifted us a framework that turned the chaos of the world into calculable order, proving that precision is often the mother of philosophy. The grid of Mohenjo-Daro is a silent testament to a different kind of genius, one of civic order and mass production. While Egypt built for eternity and Mesopotamia calculated the heavens, the Indus Valley civilization engineered for urban life on a colossal scale. Their signature achievement was a uniformity so precise it feels modern, anchored by a small, powerful unit scholars call the Indus inch, roughly 1.32 inches. This measure was not found carved on a royal rod, but multiplied 1,000,000 times over in the sun-dried bricks that built an entire civilization. Every brick, from the citadels of Harappa to the docks of Lothal, adhered to a standardized ratio of 4:2:1, its length twice its width and 4 times its height. As archaeologist John Marshall first documented, this ratio is a constant echo across hundreds of miles, implying a central authority or a shared technical doctrine so effective it created interchangeable parts over 1,000 years before the Romans. The unit itself was likely born from the natural world, perhaps tied to the length of a barley grain, a common seed for measurement. But the Harappans refined this seed into a system of decimal multiples, allowing for effortless scaling from the tiny inch to the vast city block. This was metrology as a tool for social cohesion. Their cities were laid out on a precise north-south, east-west grid, with streets intersecting at perfect right angles. To achieve this, surveyors likely used simple but effective tools, like a rope with knots at measured intervals or a wooden cross staff to check angles. The result was a masterclass in urban planning, with sophisticated drainage, uniform wells, and organized neighborhoods all arising from that initial, unwavering standard. The Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro stands as the ultimate case study. This large, waterproofed pool is a perfect rectangular structure, its sides aligned with cardinal directions with a precision that speaks of careful astronomical observation or geomantic practice. Its bricks fit together with a seamless exactness that ensured it held water for centuries, a feat of engineering born from measurement. This raises a profound logistical question. Without a known system of writing to disseminate blueprints, how was this standard communicated and enforced across a territory larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined? The answer may lie in the system's elegant simplicity and the bricks themselves. A standardized brick is its own instruction manual. Once a kiln master knew the template, he could produce the core building block of the empire endlessly, and every bricklayer from any city would know exactly how to fit it into the growing wall. The civilization itself became a physical network, linked not by parchment decrees, but by the perfect, repeating geometry of fired clay. So what does this tell us about the power of a shared measure? It reveals that precision can be the foundation not of a temple, but of a society, enabling cooperation on a scale that transforms a collection of towns into a seamless, resilient civilization capable of thriving for millennia. The roar of the crowd at Olympia was not just for the athletes but for the ground they ran upon. The stadium track, precisely 600 Greek feet in length, was a monument to measurement in its own right. This system, centered on the Greek foot of about 30.8 centimeters, represented a profound shift in thinking. Here, measurement was no longer solely a divine gift or an administrative tool. It became a philosophical pursuit of human perfection. The famous Roman architect Vitruvius later codified this ideal, describing how the proportions of a well-formed human body could inform perfect architecture. This was the Greek genius to see the human form itself as the source of harmonious scale. Architects like Iktinos, designing the Parthenon, employed these units to execute breathtaking optical refinements. They subtly curved the temple's base and inclined its columns inward, calculations made in feet and dactyls, so that from a distance the entire structure would appear perfectly straight and majestic to the human eye. The precision served an aesthetic and spiritual truth, making the temple not just a building but a perfected experience. This system was beautifully interconnected. The Greek foot was often divided into 16 dactyls or fingers. 2 feet made a cubit and 4 cubits made a fathom, the span of a man's outstretched arms. This geometric progression from finger to arm span created a seamless ladder of measurement, all rooted in the human body. To lay out the sacred stadion at Olympia, surveyors would have used simple chains of a known length, or perhaps a calibrated wheel, ensuring the sprint was a true test of speed on a course of absolute consistency. Yet the ultimate testament to this system's power is not above ground, but beneath it. On the island of Samos, the engineer Eupalinos masterminded a tunnel over 1 kilometer long, dug straight through a mountain to serve as an aqueduct. His teams started from opposite sides, guided only by geometry and these standardized measures. When they met in the middle, the alignment error was astonishingly minimal, a feat of surveying that would challenge engineers for centuries. So we must ask, what force drove such precision in a water tunnel where beauty was unseen? It was the same Hellenistic conviction that shaped the Parthenon, a belief that correctness in form, in proportion, in execution, was a virtue unto itself. The Greek system bridged the muscle of the athlete, the eye of the artist, and the mind of the engineer, proving that the pursuit of ideal form could yield impossibly precise and enduring results. The crunch of hobnailed sandals on gravel was the sound of an empire measuring itself. For the Roman legionary, the very act of marching was a metronomic application of a master system, where every step was a unit of conquest. The Roman pes, or foot, measuring about 29.6 centimeters, was the heartbeat of this imperial machine, and from it grew the mighty mil passus, 1,000 paces, giving us the mile. This was not a system of philosophy or cosmic alignment, but one of ruthless practicality and control, designed to subdue the world through order. Its genius lay in its versatile subdivisions, blending base 10 and base 12 math. The foot was divided into 12 uncia, or inches, and also grouped into decimal units for larger surveys. This dual approach made it equally adept at calculating a soldier's pay in ounces of silver and laying out an entire city grid. The Roman land surveyor, or grammaticus, was a key agent of this order. As the surveyor Hyginus Grammaticus detailed in his manuals, his primary tool was the Groma, a simple but devastatingly effective device. It consisted of a vertical staff with a crossbeam from which plumb lines were hung, allowing for the sighting of perfect right angles across any landscape. With this, a team could lay out the limites, the sacred boundary lines of a new territory, or stamp the identical blueprint of a marching camp onto foreign soil each night, a temporary city born of measurement. To ensure this uniformity from the banks of the Tiber to the foggy hills of Britannia, standards were physically disseminated. Bronze or stone rulers inscribed with the pes, its palm, and its digit were distributed, often marked with the name of the reigning emperor, making standardization an act of political power. This network of precision enabled one of Rome's most enduring legacies, infrastructure. Consider the Pont du Gard aqueduct in southern France. To carry water over 50 kilometers from a spring to the city of Nemesis, engineers had to maintain a steady, gentle gradient of only about 1 in 3,000. Using chorobates, precise water leveling instruments, and calculating entirely within the Roman foot system, they achieved a descent so consistent that water flowed smoothly the entire distance, culminating in that staggering 3-tiered bridge across a river valley. The aqueduct did not just carry water, it carried Roman authority, a literal flow of civilization made possible by measurement. So we must reflect what is the true mortar of an empire. It is not only legions, but the invisible lines they marched between, the standardized bricks of their forts, and the mathematical certainty of water flowing downhill in a precisely measured channel. The Roman system bound diverse lands into a single, manageable entity, proving that precision could be the most powerful weapon of all, not to destroy, but to build a world in one unyielding image. The clepsydra's water dripped with a rhythm that matched the court astronomers' calculations. In the Han dynasty, the kai, a unit roughly the length of a handspan, and the larger lai, a distance of about 500 meters, were far more than tools for building. They were the fundamental notes in a grand symphony of statecraft, where to measure the earth was to tune the empire itself into harmony with heaven. This system's genius was its profound interconnection, weaving together space, time, and even sound into a single, coherent philosophy of precision. The ancient text, the Zhu Bai Suan Jing, details how fundamental measures were derived from the shadow lengths cast by a standard gnomon at the summer and winter solstices. Astronomy provided the unchanging reference, a celestial ruler against which all human standards could be checked and corrected. But the connection grew even more elegant with the pitch pipe. Master craftsmen would create a set of 12 bamboo pipes, each cut to a precise length that, when blown, produced one of the 12 fundamental notes in the Chinese musical scale. The length of the pipe that produced the foundational note, the yellow bell, was defined as the standard kai. This created a direct, physical link between the science of sound and the science of space, a concept known as harmony between pitch and measure. A deviation in a land surveyor's ruler would literally be a note out of tune with the cosmic order. This philosophically rich system was also intensely practical, built on a straightforward decimal framework. 10 kai made a zhang, and 180 zhang made 1 lai. This allowed for seamless scaling from the intimate to the immense. It was with these units that the brilliant polymath Heng engineered his legendary seismoscope in the 2nd century. This bronze urn, adorned with dragons and toads, used a precise pendulum mechanism inside a carefully measured casing to not only detect tremors from hundreds of miles away, but to indicate the direction of the quake. Its operation relied on the exact calibration of internal components, a feat of micro-measurement made possible by the same system used to map provinces. The ultimate testament to this applied harmony, however, is not a delicate instrument, but a monumental landscape. The Dujiangyan irrigation system, built over 2,000 years ago in Sichuan, is a masterpiece of hydraulic engineering that still functions today. To tame a violent river and distribute its water across a vast plain, engineers had to calculate slopes, channel widths, and weir heights with breathtaking exactness. They used the kai and lai to survey the terrain and model the water's flow, creating a self-regulating network that prevented floods and irrigated farmland without a single dam. The system's longevity is a direct result of those initial, perfectly harmonized calculations. So what does this integrated approach teach us? While other cultures excelled in geometry or logistics, the Chinese system pursued a resonant truth that precision is most powerful when it synchronizes different realms of knowledge. To build a lasting world, they seem to say, your measures must be in tune with the music of the spheres and the flow of the river, a holistic vision where science was an act of maintaining balance for the benefit of all. The humid air of Palenque hummed with the sound of a different calculation. In the Mayan world, precision was not chained to a fixed rod or a bronze standard. it was unlocked through the silent language of perfect proportion. While scholars identify a unit called the hunab, its true power was not in its absolute length, which may have varied, but in its role as a building block for sacred geometry. This was a system where measurement became music, and every temple was a chord in a celestial harmony. The Mayan architect, guided by priest astronomers, thought in ratios. They employed fundamental relationships like the 1:2 ratio, which defines the diagonal of a perfect square, and the 3-4-5 Pythagorean triangle, to lay out their sacred spaces with a consistency that feels mathematical and divine. As epigrapher David Stewart's work reveals, these same proportional principles are woven into the fabric of their long-count calendar, the vast cycle of time they tracked with such astonishing accuracy. The rhythm of the cosmos and the blueprint of the temple were expressions of the same underlying order. To translate this geometry into stone, they began with the human body, using units like the kayak or handspan and the al, the distance from a man's fingertips to his opposite shoulder. But these organic measures were merely the starting note. Through the application of their sacred ratios, they scaled these intimate dimensions up to the monumental, ensuring that every part of a structure related to the whole in a mathematically perfect way. The proof dazzles at Chichen Itza. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts a shadow down the northern staircase of El Castillo, the Great Pyramid, creating the undulating illusion of a serpent slithering from the heavens to the earth. This is not a lucky alignment. It is the direct, engineered result of the pyramid's precise dimensions, its number of steps, and the angles of its construction, all calculated using this proportional system to interact with a specific solar event. So we must sit with a quiet marvel. This architectural harmony, this dialogue with the sun, was achieved by a civilization that did not use the wheel for transport, the pulley for lifting, or metal tools for carving. Their technology was the ratio, their crane was geometry. By mastering proportion, they found a path to precision that was independent of any physical master standard that could be lost or warped. A hunab in one city-state might differ slightly from another, but a 3-4-5 triangle is a universal truth. This allowed their knowledge to be replicated and their celestial alignments to be recreated across the diverse and often disconnected Maya world. Their legacy asks us a profound question. Is true precision found in the unyielding rigidity of a unit, or in the eternal, adaptable truth of a perfect relationship? High in the Andes, a Quipucamayok's fingers moved with purpose over a cascade of knotted cords. This was not a textile, but a three-dimensional ledger, recording tributes, populations, and the very dimensions of an empire that ruled by the mountains. The Incan unit of land, the tupu, was a practical measure enough to sustain a family, but the empire's true architectural and spiritual precision was expressed through something more profound, the tukapu, a conceptual grid of sacred space and social order. This system did not just measure land, it wove measurement into the fabric of society and the sacred geography of the landscape itself. As anthropologist Tom Zuidma's work illuminates, the capital city of Cusco was the epicenter of this living grid. From the Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun, 41 invisible lines called secs radiated outward like spokes on a wheel. Each sec was a precise alignment, connecting specific springs, mountains, and shrines known as huacas. These lines were meticulously measured and maintained, serving a dual purpose as both a calendar and a ritual map. The shrines along each line were used to mark time, with responsibilities for their upkeep assigned to specific noble families, binding social duty to cosmic observation. This integration of measurement, astronomy, and social organization is what made the system so resilient and precise. Nowhere is the physical manifestation of this precision more breathtaking than in the stonework. At sites like Sacsayhuaman above Cusco or the terraces of Machu Picchu, masons worked with a tactile, iterative standard. They did not use a written blueprint or a rigid metal ruler. Instead, they employed a process of direct physical fitting. A stone would be painstakingly shaped using harder stones and sand abrasion, then offered up to its space in the wall. The masons would read the contact points, shave off another millimeter, and try again. This process, repeated thousands of times, resulted in the famous polygonal masonry where giant blocks fit together with seams so tight a razor blade cannot slip between them. The standard was not a unit of length but the pursuit of perfect interlocking contact. This was precision achieved through intimate dialogue between the craftsman, the stone, and its intended place. The terraces of Machu Picchu exemplify this principle on a grand scale. To farm the steep mountainsides, engineers constructed vast retaining walls and flat planting beds. Each terrace had to be perfectly level to prevent erosion and manage water flow, yet they were built on a wildly uneven slope. Using simple tools like water-filled trenches to find level and standardized modules for step heights, they adapted a flexible grid to the mountain's own contours, creating a harmonious blend of human intention and natural topography. So we are left with a compelling question that challenges our modern biases. How did a culture without a formal writing system encode the complex data of land surveys, astronomical cycles, and architectural plans? The answer lies in the system itself. The quipu chords recorded numerical data in knots. The sek lines mapped ritual and time onto the physical landscape, a calendar you could walk. And the stone walls themselves were the permanent, immutable record of their construction standard. Their technology was not separate from their world. It was embedded within it, in knotted string, in sight lines to mountain peaks, and in the seamless joinery of stone. This teaches us that precision is not always about abstract numbers on a page. It can reside in a perfectly fitted joint, in a community's shared responsibility for a sacred line on the earth, and in a system where measuring the land was inseparable from sustaining the society that lived upon it. A library of clay tablets held the sky's motion in cuneiform script. The Babylonian scholar did not see a seamless arc of stars, but a calculable geometry, a circle divided into 360 perfect parts. This invention of the degree was a measurement system of pure abstraction, a conceptual ruler for the cosmos that has outlasted every empire that conceived it. Its power lay in its elegant marriage of astronomy and the Sexagesimal mathematics perfected in Mesopotamia. They observed that the solar year, while not exactly 360 days, was close enough for this number to serve as a beautiful, divisible approximation. As scholar Otto Neugebauer's work on tablets like Plimpton 322 reveals, this was not guesswork, but a deliberate mathematical choice. The number 360 is extraordinarily flexible, divisible by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 12, and so on, making celestial calculations with fractions remarkably clean. This system's roots reached back to the Sumerian Gar, a unit of land measure, showing how earthly and heavenly mathematics were branches of the same tree of knowledge. This abstract grid was then laid over the heavens with stunning effect. By dividing the ecliptic, the sun's apparent path, into 360 degrees, Babylonian astronomers could plot the precise movement of planets and stars. They further subdivided each degree into 60 minutes, and each minute into 60 seconds, terms we still use today. This precise angular measurement was the key to their predictive prowess. Using meticulous records kept over generations, they could calculate the recurring Saros cycle and predict lunar eclipses not as omens of dread, but as scheduled celestial events, a profound demystification of the universe. The most enduring application of this system was the creation of the zodiac. They mapped the 12 constellations along the ecliptic, each occupying a 30-degree segment of their celestial circle. This was not astrology as we think of it, but a sophisticated coordinate system, a map that allowed them to state with mathematical certainty that Jupiter was in the constellation of Taurus at a specific degree. This framework provided a universal language for the sky, adopted and refined by Greeks, Indians, and Arabs, eventually reaching our modern world. So we must pause on that number, 360. Why has this particular convention, born from clay tablets and base 60 math, proven so universally useful for millennia, from ancient stargazers to modern engineers? Its longevity is a testament to a profound truth, that the most precise and enduring measurements are sometimes not physical objects we can hold, but elegant ideas we can think with. The Babylonian degree gave humanity a shared grid for the sky, turning the overwhelming vault of heaven into a measurable, predictable, and navigable space. The royal road stretched for over 2,700 kilometers, a dusty artery of imperial command. For the Persian king's couriers racing along it, distance was not marked in rigid lengths, but in the rhythmic plod of a mule. Their fundamental unit was the parasang, a measure defined not by a king's arm or a fraction of the earth, but by function, the ground a loaded pack animal could cover in 1 hour of walking, roughly 5 to 6 kilometers. This was a brilliant, pragmatic twist, measurement not as an abstract truth, but as a living tool for movement. As the Greek historian Herodotus recorded in his descriptions of the Persian Empire, this system provided remarkable consistency across the empire's staggering diversity of mountains, deserts, and plains. A parasang in the flat river valley felt similar to a parasang in the rolling foothills because both were calibrated to the same reality, the endurance of the beasts and men who used them. This functional definition required a powerful infrastructure to give it real precision. The Persian genius was in standardizing the experience of the journey itself. At intervals of precisely 1 parasang along the royal road, the state maintained way stations, places where imperial messengers could swap their tired mount for a fresh one, securing a relentless pace. The road itself was carefully maintained, its surface graded and cleared, ensuring that the hour's walk for a mule remained a consistent measure of distance regardless of weather or season. This network turned the parasang from a vague idea into an operational heartbeat for the empire. This system did not emerge in a vacuum. It had a sophisticated ancestor in the Babylonian Baru, a double hour's travel distance, showing a long regional tradition of blending time and space. The Persians took this concept and scaled it to an imperial level. Archaeological studies of the royal road's suspected route reveal a compelling pattern, where the remains of way stations appear at intervals that closely match the parasang distance, even across challenging terrain. This indicates surveyors and engineers calculated not just straight lines, but viable paths, and then stamped that repeating unit onto the landscape with impressive regularity. So what does this time-based measure reveal about the nature of precision? The Persian parasang teaches us that accuracy can be contextual and dynamic. For an empire built on communication and control, the most critical measurement was not how many cubits long a temple was, but how many hours it took an order to travel from the capital to a rebellious satrapy. Their precision was logistical, embedded in the gallop of a horse and the spacing of a rest stop. It invites a reflective question: when is a measure most true, when it is an immutable constant, or when it perfectly serves the motion it was designed to enable? The carpenter's plane glides across the fragrant cedar, releasing a curl of wood as thin as paper. In the quiet of an Edo period workshop, every cut is guided by a wooden ruler marked not with numbers but with a philosophy. This is the Shakkan-ho system, where the basic unit, the shaku, roughly 30.3 centimeters, is more than a length, it is a bridge to the natural world. Unlike the rigid metal standards of the West, this was a system of organic relationships, where precision was found not in unyielding fixation, but in harmonious proportion. The tools were simple: the shaku stick itself, often made from a stable hardwood like persimmon, and its decimal subdivisions, the sun and the bu, yet the thinking behind them was profoundly sophisticated. It was built on a foundation of what we call irrational ratios, specifically the golden section and the square root of 2. These are mathematical constants that appear throughout nature, in the spiral of a shell or the branching of a tree. By embedding these ratios into their architecture, Japanese craftsmen were ensuring their structures possessed a natural, inherent stability and beauty. As architect Heino Engel detailed in his studies of traditional Japanese design, this was formalized in the Kiwari method, a system of proportional design. Kiwari means dividing the wood, and it provided master carpenters with a set of modular rules. The dimensions of every beam, pillar, and eave were not arbitrarily chosen. They were derived from the base size of the central pillar, multiplied or divided by these sacred ratios. This meant that a temple built in Kyoto and a home built in a distant village, while different in scale, would share the same harmonious bones, the same rhythmic proportions that the eye recognizes as balanced and right. This modular thinking extended to the very fabric of daily life through the tatami mat. A standard tatami mat's dimensions were fixed, typically 3 shoku by 6 shoku, a perfect 1:2 ratio. Rooms were not measured in square meters but in tatami counts, a flexible, human-scaled module that dictated the layout of an entire home. The system's ultimate testament, however, is a cycle of rebirth. The eye's grand shrine, the most sacred site in Shinto, is ritually dismantled and rebuilt on an adjacent plot every 20 years. This practice has continued for over 1,000 years. There are no ancient architectural drawings, no digital schematics. The entire complex, from the grand thatched roofs down to the joinery of the fences, is reconstructed with perfect fidelity using only the Shakkan-ho measures and the Kiwari proportions passed from master to apprentice. The tools are new, the wood is fresh, but the proportions are eternal. So this presents a beautiful paradox. How does a system that avoids absolute fixation, that uses wooden rulers that can warp and change, achieve such timeless consistency? The answer is that the standard was not the physical ruler, but the proportional relationship it encoded. The shoku could vary slightly from region to region, but a golden ratio is a universal truth. The precision was in the pattern, not the particle, a living tradition that bent like bamboo without breaking, ensuring that every generation could rebuild the past not from a blueprint, but from a shared understanding of harmony. The geometry of a stone circle is a frozen conversation with the sky. Among the wind-swept rings of Kalanish and the vast earthworks of Avebury, a retired engineer named Alexander Thom saw not just monuments but mathematics. After surveying over 600 megalithic sites across Britain and France, he proposed a startling idea that the builders shared a common unit of measure, a megalithic yard of approximately 2.72 feet or 83 centimeters. This was a radical claim, suggesting a coordinated culture of measurement spanning thousands of years and hundreds of miles in Neolithic Europe, long before written records. Thom's evidence was statistical. He found that the diameters of stone circles, the spacings between monoliths, and the radii of surrounding embankments often appeared as whole number multiples of this proposed yard. At sites like the Rollright Stones in England, the circle's diameter measures almost exactly 40 megalithic yards. The pattern, Thom argued, was too consistent to be random chance, pointing to a transmitted standard of extraordinary longevity. But where could such a precise unit have originated? One compelling theory links it to a simple pendulum. A pendulum with a length of half a megalithic yard, when swung, completes a beat in a very specific fraction of time, potentially corresponding to a heartbeat or a rhythmic step, creating a natural, reproducible standard. Another theory connects it to astronomy, perhaps derived from a small, observed movement of a star along the horizon. The builders may have turned celestial motion into a tangible length they could pace out on the ground. The case for this shared language is vividly illustrated at Avebury, one of the largest Neolithic henge monuments in the world. Its massive outer bank and ditch form a near-perfect circle. Tom's surveys suggest its complex inner settings of smaller stone circles and avenues were laid out using precise geometry based on Pythagorean triangles, all dimensioned in whole megalithic yards. Similarly, at the Callanish stones in Scotland, the alignment of the central monoliths and the avenues appear to follow a layout governed by this same unit and sacred geometry. This invites a profound and necessary question. Where do we draw the line between a genuine prehistoric pattern and the compelling illusion of coincidence? Critics rightly point out that with hundreds of sites and many possible units to test, some statistical patterns are bound to emerge. They argue that local variations in measure or construction using simple ropes and pegs could produce similar results without a continent-wide standard. Yet, even if the megalithic yard remains a captivating hypothesis rather than a proven fact, its value is undeniable. It opens a speculative window into a world of oral tradition we can scarcely comprehend. It challenges us to consider that precision could be carried not on clay tablets or bronze rods, but in the chants of surveyor priests, in the knotted ropes they stretched between posts, and in a shared ritual knowledge so deeply ingrained it could stamp identical geometric intentions across a landscape for generations. The stones themselves ask us, what sophisticated understanding can be woven into a tradition that leaves no written manual, only silent, aligned sentinels of earth and sky? The House of Wisdom in Baghdad was a symphony of languages where Greek geometry met Indian numerals and Persian astronomy, while the kasab, a linear measure for land, was used in markets and construction. The true legacy of the Islamic Golden Age was a revolution in measuring the intangible, the angle, and the instant. Scholars like Al-Khwarizmi and Al-Biruni were not just translators, they were master calibrators, refining inherited knowledge into tools of breathtaking exactness. Their quest demanded a new generation of instruments, each a marvel of micro-measurement. The astrolabe, a handheld model of the universe, and the mural quadrant, a giant arc fixed to an observatory wall, required their brass scales to be etched with divisions of degrees finer than ever before. This was precision with a purpose, to map the heavens with such fidelity that prayer times could be determined exactly, and the direction to Mecca, the Qibla, could be found from any city on earth. Al-Biruni's calculations stand as a pinnacle of this applied rigor. Using a massive quadrant to measure the angle of a mountain peak from two different locations, he performed a complex trigonometric calculation to determine the Earth's circumference. His result was within 1% of the modern value, an achievement reached without leaving his region, powered by a measurement system that trusted the geometry of angles absolutely. This intellectual ferment was supported by state-sponsored standardization. Under Caliph Al-Ma'mun, a major project was launched to unify weights and measures across the empire. For volume, they turned to the perfect consistency of water, defining units by the weight of a specific volume of water at a standard temperature, a concept echoing modern metric principles. This created a reliable foundation for trade, science, and architecture. The theory met practice in stone at the Great Mosque of Damascus. Its courtyard contains exquisitely crafted sundials, designed not just to tell the hour, but to mark the 5 daily prayer times with solar precision. The angle of the gnomon, the curves of the hour lines, all were calculated using the advanced spherical trigonometry developed in the very same scholarly tradition. So we must ask, what catalytic force turned this era into such a crucible of innovation? It was the conscious, deliberate fusion of cultures. The Arab scholars did not merely preserve Greek texts, they scrutinized and corrected them, merging them with Indian decimal notation and Persian observational data. This created a feedback loop of global knowledge, where a measurement technique from Sind could improve an instrument design in Baghdad, which in turn could refine a star chart for a navigator in the Mediterranean. The Islamic Golden Age did not just advance precision, it globalized it, proving that the most accurate standards emerge not from isolation, but from the open, rigorous exchange of ideas across the known world. A sea of gray waves and a sky without landmarks demanded a different kind of reckoning. For the Viking navigator steering a longship toward the rumored shores of Greenland, precision was not etched in stone but held in the hands, a visceral skill born from wind, water, and the low arc of the sun. Their linear measure, the allen, roughly the length from a man's elbow to his fingertips, ensured the rivets and overlapping planks of their ships were consistently spaced, creating vessels that were both flexible and strong. Yet the far greater measurement was the journey itself, mastered through an empirical system of navigation so reliable it became a repeatable path across an empty ocean. The sagas speak not of maps but of sailing directions, passages measured in days sailing, a unit that blended distance with the experienced speed of a laden longship under favorable wind. This was a living metric, refined over countless voyages and passed down orally, turning the terrifying expanse of the North Atlantic into a sequence of known durations. The true genius of their system, however, lay in finding position. Without a sextant or a magnetic compass that worked near the pole, they learned to read latitude by the sun. A fascinating artifact, the Unartok disk discovered in Greenland, appears to be a bearing dial. When aligned with the shadow of a central gnomon at local noon, it could help a navigator maintain a consistent east-west course. More crucially, by noting the length of the noon's shadow on different days of a voyage and comparing it to remembered lengths from home or a destination, a skilled navigator could essentially gauge how far north or south they had traveled. This method of dead reckoning, constantly estimating position from direction, speed, and time, was elevated to an art form. It was likely augmented by the legendary sunstone, a crystal-like Iceland spar that can polarize light, revealing the sun's position even through dense cloud cover or fog, providing a celestial fix when the sky itself was blank. The system's success is written in the archaeology of settlement. The voyages to Iceland, Greenland, and even the coast of North America were not accidental drifts but deliberate, repeatable expeditions. They required an intimate, collective understanding of bird flight patterns, whale migrations, watercolor, and wave formations, all synthesized into a navigational intelligence that was a crew's most precious cargo. This challenges our very definition of a measurement system. The Vikings built no grand observatories and left behind no manuals of geometry. Their precision resided in the shared experience of the crew, in the feel of the ship beneath them, and in the oral tradition that turned subjective observation into a trustworthy guide. It asks us, can the most reliable standard of all be the accumulated wisdom of 1,000 successful journeys, held not in a ledger, but in the memory of the ones who lived to tell the tale? The monsoon rains did not threaten anchor, they were its lifeblood, meticulously measured and directed. Beneath the towering spires of Angkor Wat lay a hidden city of water, an engineering marvel governed by the Khmer unit of the Hat. This was not merely a system for building temples, but for sculpting an entire landscape with hydrological precision, a grand imitation of the mythical celestial ocean from Hindu cosmology. The vast barrays or reservoirs and the grid of canals were not just practical infrastructure, they were a cosmological statement, with measurement serving as the language of this sacred hydrology. Modern LiDAR surveys, which map the ground through dense jungle canopy, have revealed the staggering accuracy of this vision. The central axes of Angkor Thom and key canal alignments are oriented to cardinal directions with an error of less than half a degree, and some major features align precisely with the solstice sunrises and sunsets. This celestial choreography was etched into the earth on a monumental scale. To achieve such alignment over kilometers, Khmer engineers relied on elegantly simple tools. Long bamboo sighting poles planted in the ground allowed surveyors to establish straight lines across the undulating terrain. Their most crucial instrument, however, was the water level, a long trough filled with water that provided a perfectly horizontal reference line regardless of the ground's slope. With this, they could transfer level from one point to another with remarkable consistency, the fundamental act that made their hydraulic empire possible. This precision was then locked into the very materials of construction. Standardized brick and laterite block sizes, measured in hats and smaller subunits, meant that every component of a sluice gate, canal lining, or temple foundation could be replicated perfectly across the kingdom. The moats surrounding Angkor Wat itself are not just defensive features, they are precisely measured hydraulic buffers and reflecting pools, their widths and depths calculated to manage water flow and create symbolic boundaries. The masterpiece of this system is the West Barre. This artificial reservoir stretches 8 kilometers long and 2.3 kilometers wide, an expanse of water engineered with breathtaking exactness. To ensure it filled evenly and drained effectively, its bed was leveled to a gradient of just a few centimeters per kilometer. Achieving this over such a distance with manual labor and simple tools represents a triumph of large-scale applied measurement. So we must contemplate the driving force behind this aquatic precision. How did a society not just survive but thrive in a climate of violent seasonal deluges followed by months of drought? The answer lies in their philosophical framework. They did not seek to conquer nature, but to conduct a measured dialogue with it. By mirroring the cosmic order in their canals and reservoirs, they believed they were maintaining harmony between heaven and earth. The Khmer system teaches us that the highest precision is sometimes an act of profound balance, using measured earth and water to write a stable, enduring civilization into a landscape of extremes. The sky above Axum is held in place by stone. Towering over the ancient Ethiopian plateau, the great stelae of Axum are not mere monuments, but declarations of precision carved from a single, defiant piece of granite. Their existence is a testament to a measurement system of remarkable endurance, the Ethiopian Cubit, a standard that whispered through Jay's manuscripts and guided the hands of masons for over 1,000 years. This unit, part of a deep regional metrology, did more than dictate dimensions. It encoded a worldview, linking the kingdom of Axum directly to the legendary wisdom of Solomon and the sacred geography of the Old Testament. The epic text Kebra Nagast, the glory of the kings, weaves this connection, describing how the measures and architectural knowledge of Jerusalem were brought to Ethiopia, embedding the Cubit within a narrative of divine right and cultural destiny. This was measurement as a thread of continuity, a sacred inheritance made physical. To stand before one of these stelae is to witness that precision in silent action. Each obelisk is a masterclass in controlled geometry. They taper perfectly from a broad, rectangular base to a rounded peak, often capped with a symbolic semicircle. This gradual narrowing is not a rough approximation, but a calculated diminution, each face plane meeting its neighbor with exacting symmetry. Even more astonishing are the intricate carvings that adorn them, simulating multi-story buildings with false doors and windows rendered to perfect scale, a detailed architectural facade etched into solid stone. The ambition of this system finds its most dramatic and tragic expression in the Great Stele. This fallen giant, estimated to have stood over 33 meters tall, represents the largest single stone humans have ever attempted to erect. Its quarrying, shaping, and intended raising was an enterprise of staggering confidence, entirely dependent on the unwavering consistency of the cubit at every stage. Its collapse speaks not to a failure of measurement, but to the outer limits of what even perfect calculation could physically achieve. And here lies the profound insight of the Ethiopian system, its persistence. While other ancient standards faded into archaeology, the Ethiopian cubit and its proportional principles survived. It migrated from pagan stelae to the construction of rock-hewn Christian churches at Lalibela, where dimensions of sanctuaries and the spacing of pillars echo the same ancient ratios. It lived on in the manuals of church builders, a sacred craft passed through generations. This continuity forces a reflective question: when does a unit of measure stop being a tool and start being a vessel? In Ethiopia, the cubit became a container for cultural identity and sacred memory, a tangible link to a glorious past that ensured the precision of ancestors continued to shape the spiritual landscape of the present. The colossal heads of the Olmec stare from the jungle with a silent, knowing authority. In the humid cradle of Mesoamerica, centuries before the Maya perfected their celestial geometry, this mother culture was already imposing a profound sense of order upon the world. Without a single deciphered written record, their measurement system is a ghost in the archaeological machine, yet its imprint is undeniable in the monumental scale and deliberate placement of their creations. The evidence suggests they worked from a standardized module, a repeated unit of length that may have originated from something as tangible as the width of a ceremonial axe or the proportions of the human body, then scaled to shape plazas and pyramids. This was precision emerging from practice, a foundational grammar for the landscape. At the great centers of San Lorenzo and La Venta, modern surveys reveal a telling pattern. The platforms, ceremonial courts, and even the distances between certain key structures appear to be multiples of a common unit, estimated by some researchers to be around 2.8 meters. Furthermore, the central axes of these plazas are often aligned not to true north, but to magnetic north, or to significant mountain peaks on the horizon, indicating a sophisticated integration of measurement with geomancy and astronomy. Interpreting such a system presents a unique challenge, as we are reading a blueprint without its legend. We see the repeated numbers, the harmonious proportions, but the original unit's name and its cultural meaning are lost. The principles, however, speak through the stone. Consider the sourcing and shaping of the iconic basalt heads, each weighing many tons. The basalt came from the Tuxtla Mountains, transported over 80 kilometers through swamp and forest. Before a single chip was struck, the master sculptors would have needed a shared mental template, an agreed-upon scale for the face's width, the height of the headdress, the spacing of the eyes. This template allowed teams working on different heads to produce a cohesive artistic canon, a family of giants all born from the same idea of proportion. The raw material was irregular, but the finished product obeyed a consistent visual and dimensional rule. So what foundational order did the Olmec establish for those who followed? They demonstrated that a society could coordinate large-scale labor and express complex ideology through a shared, if unspoken, language of measure. They mapped meaning onto the earth with plazas and aligned avenues, creating a staged world where human activity unfolded within a measured, sacred frame. Their legacy was not a specific unit passed down, but the revolutionary concept that a community could, and should, imprint its own precise geometry upon the chaos of the natural world, a principle that would echo for millennia in the temples and calendars of their descendants. Light does not merely enter the dome of Hagia Sophia, it is conjured. When the Emperor Justinian commissioned a church to surpass all others, architects Anthemius of Tralles and Isidore of Miletus were tasked with a seemingly impossible feat: to place a massive circular dome upon a square base of monumental scale. Their solution was not born from brute strength, but from a Byzantine measurement system that served as a translator, turning pure theoretical mathematics into the language of stone and mortar. They worked with units like the bimah or pace and the orguia, a fathom of about 1.8 meters, but the true unit of construction was a more abstract one: the geometric module. The entire plan of Hagia Sophia was generated from a single, repeated square. This master square, defined by the central nave's width, became the generating unit for every dimension that followed, from the span of the side aisles to the height of the galleries. This modular grid allowed the architects to calculate the complex curves that would make the impossible structure stand. The writings of the historian Procopius, who witnessed the construction, marvel at the application of theoretical knowledge. He notes that Anthemius was not just a builder but a scholar of Euclid and Archimedes. This was the system's revolutionary core. It was a vessel for applying abstract geometry to the physical world. The architects used precise ratios to design the pendentives, the elegant triangular curving segments that transition the square base to the circular rim of the dome. Each curve, each arch was not a guess but a calculated answer to a problem of load and thrust. They were mapping vectors of force with the tools of a geometer. The history of the dome itself is a testament to this relentless pursuit of a perfect form. The original, slightly flatter dome collapsed in an earthquake in 558. Isidore the Younger, nephew of the original architect, was commissioned to rebuild it. He did not start over, he refined, he recalculated, using the same modular system and geometric principles, but this time he raised the dome higher, making it more pointed to better distribute its weight onto the supporting piers. This new design stood for centuries. How did they perform such calculations without modern material science? Their intuition was built from a deep, empirical understanding of proportion. They knew from generations of trial and error codified into theory that an arch of a specific rise to span ratio would behave in a predictable way. They understood that the weight of a dome could be channeled along specific lines of force, which they could visualize and reinforce through the placement of secondary half-domes and buttresses. The system was a dialogue between the ideal geometry on parchment and the stubborn reality of brick and mortar. The final, enduring form of Hagia Sophia stands as the system's ultimate validation. It created a space that feels simultaneously immense and intimate, where the dome appears to float on a ring of light. This was not an aesthetic accident, but a calculated achievement of a measurement system that dared to treat architecture as applied mathematics, proving that the most sublime beauty could be the direct offspring of impeccable, fearless calculation. The iron chain clinked in the surveyor's hand, a sound that meant tax, title, and the king's own reach. In the patchwork fields of medieval England, precision was no longer about cosmic harmony, but about royal revenue and agricultural order. The system centered on two deeply practical units: the rod, also called a pole or perch, fixed at 16.5 feet, and the gunter's chain, a length of 66 feet, exactly 4 rods. This was measurement stripped of celestial poetry, a tool for administration on an unprecedented national scale. Their standardization by royal statute was a declaration that the land itself could be systematically catalogued, valued, and controlled. The Domesday Book, compiled in 1086 under William the Conqueror, stands as a monumental early attempt at this very project, a sprawling inventory of who owned what across England, using local units but driven by a centralizing impulse to quantify the kingdom's wealth. The units themselves were deliberately tangible. Standard rods of iron or bronze were often kept in the local parish church, a public and sacred guarantee against cheating. The gunter's chain, invented in the early 17th century, was a masterpiece of practical design, 100 links of wrought iron that folded neatly into a surveyor's hand, each link representing 7.92 inches. This chain did more than measure distance. Its very structure simplified calculation. 10 square chains made 1 acre, and 80 chains made 1 furlong, a word derived from furrow long, the distance a team of oxen could plow before resting. This interconnected system meant a surveyor could measure a field in chains and instantly compute its area in acres, a seamless efficiency for assessing taxable yield. The system's precision literally reshaped the landscape. Consider the planned villages or bastides established in newly cleared areas. royal surveyors laid out these settlements using the rod and chain, allotting uniform strips of land to each tenant in a grid that maximized both fairness and agricultural output. The famous open field system, where villagers farmed individual strips within large communal fields, relied entirely on this measured partitioning to prevent disputes and ensure each family's livelihood. The straight hedgerows and property boundaries that still crisscross the English countryside today are often the direct legacy of these medieval surveys. So we must pause on that clinking chain. What does it signify when measurement shifts from the temple to the tax roll? It marks a profound transition where precision becomes an instrument of secular power and economic order. The medieval English system was not about touching the divine, but about administering the earthly, creating a cadastral reality, a written and measured world of property that underpins modern law. This bureaucratic precision, this ordering of the land into numbered strips, forces us to consider a final, urgent question. If our ancestors measured to align with heaven and then to enrich the crown, what ultimate purpose does our own modern precision serve? The open ocean holds no landmarks, only rhythm and memory. Our final system transcends every physical ruler, chart, and instrument we have yet encountered. It is the Polynesian wave path navigation, a living science where the vessel itself was the human mind, and the measure was an unbroken song of stars, swells, and bird flight passed across generations. In the vast Pacific, finding a speck of land thousands of kilometers away was not a matter of luck, but of repeatable precision encoded in an oral tradition of staggering depth. The master navigator, or PWO, did not carry a map. He carried a mental star compass, dividing the horizon into 32 houses, each marked by a specific star's rising and setting point. This celestial grid provided absolute directional reference, a constant in the moving world. But direction alone is not enough without knowing position. This is where the genius of the ETAC system comes into play. An ETAC is a conceptual segment of a voyage, measured not by distance, but by the shifting backdrop of stars. The navigator would envision a reference island lying to one side of the course. As the voyage progressed, this island's position against the star compass would appear to move, sliding from one star house to the next. Each segment, each ETAC completed was a measure of progress, a way to feel movement across a featureless sea, drawing from the teachings of the late master navigator Maupiailug, who famously guided the voyaging canoe Hokulair from Hawaii to Tahiti using only traditional methods. We understand the layers of this knowledge. Latitude was found by memorizing which stars passed directly overhead, the zenith stars for specific destination islands. A star known to pass over Tahiti, when observed to be south of the zenith, told the navigator he was north of his target, and he would steer accordingly. Beyond the sky, the ocean itself spoke. Navigators learned to read the deep, rolling swells refracted around islands, feeling their direction through the hull's motion. They watched for specific species of birds whose flight ranged from land-indicated proximity, and they read the color of clouds and the taste of the wind. The successful, repeatable settlement of islands like Rapa Nui or Easter Island, one of the most isolated places on Earth, stands as the ultimate case study for this system's precision. Reaching it required holding a course for weeks across open ocean, a feat that seems impossible without a written word or a metal tool. This system, therefore, challenges our very definition of precision. It proves that accuracy can reside not in an object, but entirely in cultivated human perception and communal memory. It was a precision of relationship, of being so deeply attuned to the environment that one became a living instrument of measurement. It is a perfect, humbling note on which to conclude, reminding us that before we built rulers to measure the world, we first learned to measure with our minds, our senses, and the stories that connected us to the cosmos. That universal drive to measure from every corner of the globe speaks to something deep within the human spirit. We have traveled from the granite cubit rods of Egypt to the mental star maps of the Pacific, tracing 20 distinct systems that each achieved the impossible precision. This journey reveals a truth far greater than any single unit of length or volume. It shows us that our ancestors' quest for accuracy was never merely a practical need for building or trade. It was at its heart a profound act of meaning-making, a language they invented to link humanity to the cosmos, to bind society together, and to converse with the divine. The tools were astonishing, from the pendulum and the groma to the knotted quipu and the calibrated pitch pipe. But the real instruments were the human mind and its relentless observation of pattern in the stars, in the seas, and in the very stones of the earth. They achieved the impossible not with advanced technology as we define it, but with advanced thought, geometry, astronomy, and a tradition of knowledge so sacred it was woven into the fabric of daily life and monumental construction. The philosopher Plato once suggested that God eternally geometrizes. Our ancestors seem to live by that very principle, believing that by measuring their world with perfect ratios and celestial alignments, they were participating in a divine order, bringing a fragment of cosmic harmony down to earth. This exploration, then, is an invitation. Let it inspire you to look at the ancient wonders of the world with new eyes. See the Great Pyramid not just as a tomb, but as a scaled model of a hemisphere. See Stonehenge not as a mystery, but as a calculated observatory. See the straight Roman road and the gridded Indus city as expressions of the same impulse to impose beautiful, functional order on chaos. Recognize the hidden science in their stones, the silent mathematics in their alignments. The past is not a story of rough approximation. It is a chronicle of breathtaking exactness, achieved through ingenuity we are only beginning to fully appreciate. So as you move through your own world, pause for a moment. What forgotten standard, what echo of an ancient measure might still be encoded in the landscape around you, in the layout of an old town square or the proportions of a centuries-old building? The legacy of these 20 systems is all around us, a testament to the timeless human desire to understand our place by first learning to measure it. Share your thoughts and observations in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this journey into the secrets of history, subscribe for more. Remember, the past is often far more precise and far more brilliant than we ever dared to imagine.